Hello, everyone. This is Micah hanging out here inside the Secret Studio at Children's Hospital Colorado. And you know what? I have a good friend of mine, Maya, hanging out here virtually in the studio. And you know what? She also has a really cool special edition of Maya's latest news to keep you in the groove. Maya, who do we have here on Zoom today?
I'm Sir Patrick Stewart.
How good to see you.
You too.
Thank you for your invitation to talk with you. I'm very happy. What can I tell you?
Well, first, I just wanted to tell you that I am I'm speechless talking to you right now. You've had a very long and very successful career. And my grandfather was a fan of yours, and my mom's a fan of yours, and I'm a fan of yours. And I think it's so cool that you appeal to so many generations.
It is a little unusual, isn't it? And I can't quite explain it myself, except that I've done such a diverse career of work in so many different areas, from science fiction television series to small studio productions of Shakespeare, as well as big productions of Shakespeare. And in between, many other things, TV, films, and theater. So the type of content that I do is so broad that it actually doesn't really surprise me that I find that there are people my age and very much younger who are also interested in the work I do.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, so I was wondering who or what inspired you to start acting?
It was an English teacher. I was not an academic pupil. I did not pass the exam to get into grammar school. And I ended up going to what in England in those days was called a secondary modern school, which was, if anything, closer to being a trade school than being a school where you studied physics and French and geography and so forth. But in this school, there was an English teacher called Cecil Dormand. And one of the great joys of my life is that I still talk to Cecil Dormand today. We spoke on the telephone about a week ago. He's 94, and we had a lovely conversation. And this is the man who started it all, because when I was 12, he put a copy of Shakespeare's play, The Merchant of Venice, onto my desk and onto the desks of pals in the class, other boys and girls, and told us to start reading. Well, we did, of course. We all began reading like this, because that's how you read, silently to yourself. And Cecil Dormand yelled out, "No, you idiots, not to yourselves, to the room. This is a play. It's drama. It's life. Come on, Patrick Stewart, read out loud." So as a result of that, I read my first words of Shakespeare ever and just fell in love with it. I can't explain it. I hear sometimes from very young children who take up music, and I've heard them say they picked up the violin, the guitar, whatever, sat at the piano, and they had an affinity for it. They understood it. It was all instinctive. Well, I think that's what happened to me, because luckily with a lot of help and support, because I came from a rather poor blue-collar family. We didn't have any money to spare to send me to drama school, but I was very lucky, and with the help of my local authority, I got a grant, and I got a place in a very, very fine theatre school called the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School, and I was there for 2 years. And came out, didn't have a job, thought I was going to be employed for the rest of my life. And after 2 weeks, I did get a job in a theater. And I was 19 then, and I have basically not been out of work since then.
Oh, that's so cool.
That's incredible.
Yeah. What's your favorite thing about acting? And do you prefer stage or film?
Well, Maya, they're both so different. Although there is a fundamental need to be truthful and to be able to communicate in both being on camera as well as being on a stage, there is one huge difference which sets these two disciplines apart. And that is, in the theater, you have a never to be repeated live audience. And they play a role in the performance. I always tell audiences this because they always seem to be surprised. I say, without you, we couldn't have a performance. You play a role. Now, admittedly, the role you play is that of the listener, but we're both breathing the same air, the actor and the audience. You can see me. I know that you're all out there. This is a living event, which, of course, with film is not the case, unless it's something which is filmed live, and then it's the same, except you're not in the same room as the audience. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So you've done a lot of plays with the Royal Shakespeare Company. What got you interested in Shakespeare?
Well, in part, I've already answered that question. I wasn't interested until my English teacher put The Merchant of Venice into my hand, and then something clicked inside me. And although I didn't understand many of the words, have you, for example, have you been able to watch any of the sonnet readings that I've been doing on social media? You have. Well, there are words in those sonnets that I have to look up because I don't know what Shakespeare meant by them. But luckily, I've got a wonderful volume of the sonnets, where every sonnet has lots and lots of notes attached to it. So I can do my research and study before I go on camera and record the sonnet. But a lot of Shakespeare was unintelligible to me to begin with. But I have to say to you, and to all young people who maybe haven't encountered Shakespeare yet, or have and didn't like what they saw, be patient, give it time. And if you can find somebody who can explain things to you as you go along, you will find that what you've got in Shakespeare is dramatic writing, as good as any that you will ever find anywhere in any kind of drama. It's so rich and complex and beautiful and truthful too.
Cool. Yeah. I have to apologize for asking you a question that you already kind of answered.
That's all right.
What was it like to be knighted by Queen Elizabeth?
It was one of the most exciting days of my life. 10 years earlier, I had received what is called the Order of the British Empire. I'm a little embarrassed by the use of the word empire, by the way. An OBE, which was presented to me by Prince Charles. And then one day going through a plastic bag of mail that had been shoved into a corner and forgotten about, I found this brown manila envelope, which had written on the outside of it, Cabinet Office. You know, the cabinet are those members of the government who run the country, essentially, with the prime minister. And I opened it up curiously, not knowing what was in there, and found that it said, "We are pleased to inform you." And it was telling me that I was being offered a knighthood. And there was accompanying the letter a form with boxes to tick, which I thought was, rather everyday about something like this. Do you accept or not? Yes or no? Well, I had no hesitation to to tick the yes box, and it was so unexpected and exciting and shocking at the same time. Also, in the letter that you receive, you are told, under no circumstances must you tell anyone that you've received this information. Well, of course, later on that day, I got a chance to speak with my wife, and of course, I couldn't keep it to myself. I had to tell her. But I also had to go on the set of a movie I was shooting with about 25 other actors. And of course, I wanted to tell them, but I wasn't able. But the day of the investiture itself took place, a beautiful, beautiful spring day. My guests were my wife, my brother, and his wife. And we went to Buckingham Palace. They never tell you, by the way, who is going to be presenting the awards. It could be the Queen, it could be the Prince of Wales, it could be one of the Prince's sons. You never know who it's going to be until you get there. So to find that my knighthood was going to be awarded by Her Majesty was very exciting. And when my turn came, I was number 2 to go up. There were 2 of us being knighted, and I was the second. And I was able to watch the first man being knighted. So, in fact, we'd had a rehearsal. Someone came into a room and rehearsed us as to what we had to do, how we approached the Queen, when we bowed our head, when we had to kneel down, and so forth. And she has a sword, and she touches you twice, once on each shoulder. And that confers the knighthood on you. It's a little archaic and a little old-fashioned, but it's if you're a recipient, it's also very exciting.
Oh.
But let me say, for instance, I do not use it a lot. For example, sometimes when I'm doing interviews, the interviewer will start out by always calling me Sir Patrick, and I don't require that. I'm very honored to have this, but I will always say to people, as I say to you, please call me Patrick.
Thanks. How did you celebrate after being knighted?
Oh, Maya, it was wonderful. I have a dear friend who I've always suspected might have been influential in proposing my name to the committee that selects those to be given honors, because she's had a very significant life in the UK. And she said, so after the ceremony, you can only have 3 guests at the ceremony. I'm going to give you a luncheon. And there will be, I think she said, we can seat 18 people, and you can invite whomever you like to this. And it was marvelous to have people I've known all my life, and some people I had got to know recently, but most of them beloved friends. And that included my English teacher, who was the man who first set me on the road to being an actor. And he, the hostess, asked everyone around the table if they had one thing they wanted to say about Sir Patrick. And when it came to Mr. Dormand, he said, well, it's very confusing, because when I first knew Patrick, he had to call me Sir. And now I have to call him sir. I don't understand how we're going to make this work, which was very, very charming and funny. But, everyone said a little something, and it was a very, very emotional experience.
That's amazing.
Cool. Yeah. So you played Jean-Luc Picard in Star Trek. What was it like being part of such an iconic franchise?
Well, Maya, I have to admit, I didn't know it was iconic when I joined it. When I was invited to audition, I was living in London at the time with my family, and the audition was going to be at Paramount Pictures in Los Angeles. I didn't know anything about Star Trek, but I remembered when my children were smaller, when I was working in the theater, if I could get home on a Saturday between the matinee and the evening performance, it meant that I could read them a book, sing them a song, tuck them up for bedtime, and then go back to the theater and do my Saturday night performance. And I remembered that there had been Saturdays when I came home when they were sitting watching this thing on television with all these people wearing different colored T-shirts. and I'd asked what it was, and I think I'd forgotten that they said, "Oh, it's Star Trek. Be quiet, Daddy. Shut up. Let's listen." And so they were the people I called. I called my son and my daughter and said, "Hey, you used to watch Star Trek. What the heck is it about? Tell me about it." And they said, "Oh, Dad, you're so stupid and boring. You don't know anything, do you?" And so they told me about Star Trek, and that's how I learned about it. But I did not know at all that it was iconic. But with time, I discovered that. And one of the things that made it clear was that again and again, if I happened to mention to someone, another actor, a friend, my bank manager, my doctor, that I was going to do Star Trek, you would get this huge reaction. What? Star Trek? I love Star Trek. I grew up with Star Trek. Oh, that's fantastic. So that's how I learned that it was iconic. But you have to understand, for me, it was a job. Now, luckily, I got to work with some wonderful actors who have all, without exception, become my dearest and most beloved friends. All those actors who were in Next Generation with me. These days, during this coronavirus lockdown, I talk to them a lot. We Skype, and I catch up with them, with Jonathan Frakes and Brent Spiner and Marina Sirtis. We're very, very close. And we actually did a Zoom evening quite recently, about 10 days ago, when I think 8 of the principal cast members of Next Generation were all on Zoom together at the same time.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
You were in the movie Christmas Eve with James Roday. And I love that movie. And I actually interviewed James Roday last year. So do you have any fun stories or memories from filming?
Was that the film where we were all stuck in an elevator?
Yeah.
I remember. Well, I didn't have a lot to do in that movie, did I as I recall?
No, I think you did. I'm sorry. We saw this like 2 years ago, and so.
Well, I don't actually remember that much about it, but I do remember having a fun time with the other actors.
Oh, cool.
It's always good to have fun when you're working on set.
Yeah.
It's so important.
Yeah. I know. I loved that movie, but it did make me cry. So
Oh. Storytelling can be a very intense experience for both the teller and the listener.
yeah. Yeah. So you played John Bosley in the new remake of Charlie's Angels. So the movie was written and directed by women, and I know you've labeled yourself as a feminist. And I was wondering what it was like working with these strong, amazing women.
It was marvelous. It was such a good experience. I loved working with Elizabeth because, of course, she played a role in the film too. So we had a relationship as actor, director, and as fellow actors. And it was a marvelous experience. And maybe you're aware that the first 2 episodes of Picard were directed by someone called Hannah-Lee Culpepper. And Hannah-Lee is an African-American television director herself who did a marvelous job directing those first 2 episodes. So I have all my life loved working with female directors. One of my dearest and closest friends who tragically died very young was a director. Her name was Buzz Goodbody. And she directed me in Shakespeare. She directed me in modern plays. And we had a really deep and what I thought would be a lifelong working relationship and friendship. But unfortunately, she died, and all I have now are memories.
You starred in the X-Men franchise with your friend Ian McKellen. And I know that you guys are really good friends. So what was it like to play enemies?
Well, Maya, we were not that friendly when we started filming the very first X-Men movie. We had worked for the Royal Shakespeare Company together at the same time, but not in the same productions. I had seen Ian on stage many, many times, and I was a fan. But, you don't really like to let your fellow actors know that, you're crazy about them and the work that they do. And Ian became a star before he left college. He was spotted when he was a student at Cambridge University. He was seen then, and I think as a student, he had reviews in the London newspapers. And when he came out, he very quickly joined the National Theatre with Laurence Olivier, and he did some brilliant work, quite a lot of which I saw. So I was in awe of him. So when we were both cast together in X-Men, by the way, I am sorry, I give very long answers to very simple questions, and there's nothing I can do about it.
It's fantastic. It's lovely to hear all the answers.
Thank you. We had adjoining trailers. Now, given the kind of film X-Men was, our trailers were quite luxurious. I'd been in far, far less comfortable trailers than the ones we had. And of course, there were so many leading actors. There were like 14 of these luxury trailers, all drawn up in a line. And mine happened to be next door to Sir Ian. He is also a knight of the theatre. And, with films like X-Men, you do literally spend more time waiting to act than acting. There is a lot of trailer time And so Ian and I would find that we'd have a cup of coffee, and he would say, "Oh, come and drink your coffee in my trailer," or I would invite him into mine. And we got to know one another. And I think to our mutual surprise, we found that we had a great deal in common, as well as, enjoying a laugh and a joke and having a good time and working very, very hard, because Ian works so hard. I'll be absolutely honest with you. I'm in love with him. He's a beautiful man, and my wife is in love with him too. And we are very happy when we can be together, which hasn't been for quite a while and probably won't be for quite a while. I've done a lot of theater with Ian as well. We did 2 plays a few years ago in New York on Broadway. We did one of them in Berkeley, California, and we did them on a tour around England and in London of 2 plays, one by Samuel Beckett called Waiting for Godot, and a play by Harold Pinter called No Man's Land. And the lucky thing was that these 2 plays only have 4 roles in them, and they're all male roles. So the same 4 actors played the 4 roles in both plays. And when we were in New York, we only did this on Broadway. We would do the performances in chunks of 4. So Tuesday, Wednesday would be 1 play. And then on Wednesday evening, we do the other play. So there were always 2 days in the week, Wednesday and Saturday, when if you wanted to, you could see both plays on the same day with the same 4 actors. And a lot of people did that. And it was one of the grandest experiences of my life. Thank you for your invitation. I've enjoyed this very much. And I wish you well. Good luck to you with everything that you do.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Patrick.
It was such an honor to talk to you.
That's kind of you to say so. Thank you, Maya. Take care, my dear. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye.